Go live, and I'm going to play the intro. So we.
Oh yeah. How are you anyway then?
How are you?
I'm all right. I've had a few shitty weeks, to be honest with you, but I'm coming through it.
Oh, man, I'm getting set up in this new. I stole Morgan's office, so because it's a lot cooler up here. I have air conditioning. I didn't have air conditioning down there.
I've got three fans on me at the moment.
Do you really? Is it that warm over there?
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah, it seems to be.
It's 93
hotter than normal at the lower temperature. It's a very strange thing that's going on.
What do you mean?
I just mean the temperatures are say about 24, 25, but it seems hotter. The sun's not as golden anymore. It's just like bright, brilliant white light, isn't it? It seems to be having much more of an impact, really.
You know, that's what I think Franco said that at the beginning of 2020. He said the sun would become, the color would change, and it would become kind of white. Here, I'm going to play the intro real quick for a minute, 19 seconds, allow people time to come in. We'll be right back. What the hell's going on with that thing? It's doing some. Oh man, this is too weird. Oh, wait a minute. I just turned you off. So yeah, man. I mean, okay, we were just talking beforehand, and you were saying that you've had a few rough periods over the last few weeks. You know, I went to Sedona, and obviously I went to Sedona. I think I got there on May the 12th, and you know, through the fest, which was at the end of the month. And then I think I got back here on the 8th. And from, I don't know, mid-May, everyone I come across is saying two things. One, that stuff is coming up like it never has before. It doesn't stay as long. You get through it. But also in anything else that's uncomfortable to the human. But along with that, there's just this continued increase in intel and downloads, transmissions, understandings, revelations, epiphanies, at the same time coming at warp speed, you know? And I woke up this morning and I had like red splotches all over my face, all over my beard and my scalp. And that's usually an indication of massive, massive DNA realignment or whatever. I don't know. To the doctor, you tell us, Dr. Lightheart, what's happening over in Liverpool.
Well, to be honest with you, the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, been shit. Really, really horrible, you know. Unfortunately, my ex-wife passed away, and
what's that?
My ex-wife passed away, and
oh wow,
she was the mother. She's the mother of my children, and wow. I'm so proud of my children, Todd, because they just got together and just did what needed to be done. And the big thing about it, I didn't know I was going to say this tonight, and it's you know, it knocked me for six, to be honest with you, because I'm relatively sort of emotionally calm and clear-minded these days in most circumstances, you know. And even during this process, I was still the same, but I could feel part of me being sort of mangled at depth, you know what I mean? And a few years ago, I would have been as drunk as a skunk trying to get away from the feelings. But I know today, Todd, that what's happening to humanity in general because of this great big shift that's going on, what's actually happening is that the bonds of the past are emerging to be let go of and to be cleansed, you know, because I think I can't duck and dive anymore and get away from these uncomfortable feelings. I know that I've got to sit with them and allow them to almost dissolve and dissipate, because in a strange way, having gone through this, as well as my children going through this as well, and they, you know, Claire, James and Kate, my kids, I'm so bloody proud of them, I am. And Todd, things could have been so much different. You know, it's been a long time now since I've had a drink. I've been clean and sober for nearly 30 years, but all the old feelings came back, you know, and I could have just run away and, you know, put myself in a corner and just sought oblivion temporarily. But there would have been no temporarily about it. I would have been totally lost, you know. I didn't know I was going to start with this, mate, because I wanted to start with lightheartedness, but this is what happened, you know. And it's a very strange thing, because as I was going through this, I was almost watching myself going through it as well, you know. So there's almost like a core part of me, a core component watcher, observer, who's watching Joe the human actually letting go of this stuff and getting his act together, you know. Because what I really feel is happening now for everybody is that their souls are knocking on the physical body to say, will you please let go? I'm trying to get in here and unblock all these obstructions that are keeping you from becoming who you were really meant to be. And that's what's happened. And just to finish this bit off is, you know, of course, I've got natural feelings. What I'm trying to say is there was no sentimentality here. It was pure, natural, open, honest grief at depth. You know what I mean? And there was no way in the world I could think my way out of it. All I could do was try and keep my heart open and breathe with it. And it has eased, obviously. It's eased considerably. But it will be there forever, Todd. It will be there forever, you know.
You know, somebody's, I don't usually comment on posts anymore, you know, but I saw somebody's post and they were talking about that. They were talking about, it was actually a very good post. It was by David Ogle. I know I'm going to mess his name up. David Ogleb or something like that. David, I'm sorry. But it was a great post. And he said something to the effect that, you know, and I don't know how he said it, but he said something to the effect of, you know, this stuff's coming up. Embrace it and release it. And I had to put a comment up, which I don't normally do. It's kind of strange, but I guess it was where I was at. This was like 2 days ago. And I said, you know what I found for me is that they never leave, to your point. It never leaves. It's now part of the sum of the parts that make us, right? And when you were talking about the grief, you know, I go back to mid-March when Morgan and I got the download. You know, we had to separate, and I spent 2.5 weeks back here in the forest, just sitting, you know, just sitting. And that was the big moment was when I was in my most human, and all I could think of was not being with her. Right. So that, and again, this is a situation that's the energetic representation. Right. And so what happened was I went into this feeling in my body that I had when I was on the street, because I was going through the same type of thing, separation from kids, spouse, and everything else. Right. But there was like almost like a hole in my heart. But this was like in my gut, in my sacral, in my solar. And it was just this intense, nasty grief. And I thought, wow, I remember this grief. And it was the same grief I had, you know, 9-10 years ago. And it was like the most horrible thing. So I ended up going upstairs and I laid in the bed and for about 2.5 hours, and I literally opened up to it. That sounds real, you know, it sounds real fluffy, level light, but it wasn't. I actually went through what I would call, because I, you know, in my past, I don't anymore, but, you know, I've done a lot of plant medicine, but it was very, at least I had to say 30, 45 minutes of it was this almost like a life review in the depths of hell. Like the figures and images that I was seeing were just fucking grotesque. I mean, it was literally like the worst thing we think of here. I'm not saying it was child trafficking or that type of thing, but it was at that level, and it was in images. But I came out of it and I knew it was in its proper place. It's not gone. It's not gone. And neither are any other distractions we've had, as you were talking about with the drinking or whatever it is, shopping, whatever it is. They're always going to be with us. And you're right. We can re-engage.
See, what happened is, and I know miracles are happening, because in the last few hours, I sat with her and held her hand, and she was unconscious. And I said to her, you know, so-and-so, I said, I'm so sorry for all the shit I put you through during my drinking. And this is no lie. She came round as clear as anything. And she said to me, Joe, it wasn't your fault. Don't worry. And then she went back into unconsciousness. And when I went home,
serious?
Yeah.
Dude,
when I came home that night, I howled and howled and howled like a wolf, right? Yeah. And I could feel it. And then once again, this other part of me, the observer, was watching me going through this process, you know. And what released was a great big chunk left my solar plexus, and I could feel the warmth of it percolating into my heart and into an open throat, you know. And that's what seems to be happening now, Todd, for everybody. And I think if you don't know this, and I think it's sort of my responsibility to share honestly about this, because I think that other people are going to go through it. And I would say to them, you know, and I teach this, if you like, for a living, is basically to be able to sit with it and not interfere and just try and sit right in the middle of it and allow it to release itself, because as it releases, the information about that episode will be given to people, you know. And that's how I see it, you know. I mean, I always say this is, please don't believe a single word I say, because I could be talking nonsense here. However, it may be true. So try and sort of sit with it. And you know, and what I'm saying is, it's hard, this thing, because it's almost like we've been lost children, and now we're having to go through the dark woods and almost trust that something's guiding us through these woods where there's all these savage beasts potentially and all that sort of business, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what I really, really feel, Todd, because if we look out there to that manifestation of the past that's going on, it's basically bollocks, you know. That's where I'm up to now. Yeah. It's bollocks. It's basically the consciousness manifested of the past. And I believe that what we need to do is almost watch it without getting emotionally engaged and reactive about it, and watch it as if it's the greatest show on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, there's three things that you just pull up. One is when she opened her eyes and said to you, it was not your fault, all I could feel was the voice of the Mother Goddess. Like that was all of her saying that, you know. Wow, that's powerful. And then what you said about the heart coming from the solar or the stomach area, and then coming up into the heart, and then exploding into the throat chakra. I've experienced that 2-3 times. The last time, and I'm talking about like in this period, the last few weeks. The last time was in Sedona. So I wake up, I went out on the land style. I didn't know I was leaving. It was a Saturday night, and I'd been out with some friends eating pizza, and I had I had a lot of incredible experiences over there. But I could feel something coming on. And anyway, all night long, I was fighting. You know, Franco and Kimberly heard me on the couch, like, you know, groaning and, you know, all that stuff. And then I woke up. I threw up a couple times. I wailed over and over. And eventually I knew, and I actually knew I needed to leave. But when I left, and there was obviously a lot of stuff that I pulled in and aligned, or whatever you want to call it, released or whatever, experienced. And I was about 20 miles out of Sedona, And all of a sudden, it happened again. And it came up. And I wasn't like concentrating. I was driving down the road. I think I was talking to Morgan, and it was dark, and I was on the mountain. So this is all happening. And it came up, and it did exactly what you said. And then I felt so much lighter. I felt like I was in a spaceship. And this went on for, I mean, you know, I pulled over twice and slept overnight for short periods of time, but it was literally like I blinked my eyes and I was home. It was crazy. Like, you know, it was just crazy. There's something to be said for, we know that we're expanding and elevating, but when have those things come without something coming up? You know what I mean? Yeah. And the other thing I would say too, there's someone that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and I'm not saying that my opinion is whatever, but that 25% of the population will transition by the end of next year. And I feel like that's the kind of energy that we're in, because I talked to my daughter the other day, and, you know, she said, "Dad, did you hear about Tariq?" And I said, "No." She said he OD'd 2 days ago. But the way she told me, now she's a young little crystal child, star seed, whatever you want to call it. The way she took it, her human was hurting, but she understood it from a higher level. And this is 2 days after the love of her life passed. You know, so there's something going on. And I think a big part of that is going to be these things will continue because they're going to, you know, they're going to you know, they're going to be in front of the elevations.
I think you're right. And I think a big word that's been coming to me again is realignment. And, you know, that's what this is about to me. It's a rebalancing and a realignment. And I get a lot of people onto me about musculoskeletal problems that they're having, head, neck, and shoulder problems, but a lot of problems with their muscles as well, almost like a fibromyalgia, you know, one of those chronic myalgic encephalomyelitis. And basically what that is it's a tension myositis syndrome. It feels like all your muscles are on fire. And to me, what I think that is, Todd, is that the energy is coming in. It's coming in through the invisible realms and the meridian system, right? And then that energy, which is basically electromagnetic, is then transforming into electrical energy. The electrical energy is flushing through all of our nervous system, not just the central nervous system, but the whole skeletal nervous system. And it's flushing out our muscles as well. And where muscles are in chronic tension, they're almost being, the pain is a guidance really to say, start stretching these areas now, start massaging these areas, because I'm definitely having my posture worked on, because I was born 6 weeks premature. And I had scoliosis of the spine. It's like a little S-shaped curve in the spine. And I also had congenital hip dysplasia. So my hips were misaligned as well and stuff like that. You know, so I was born like that. And I've had those problems all my life. And consequently, my abdominal region has always been very, very weak. And in the last couple of weeks as well, this energy is almost like pumping me up, you know, pump up the volume, right? But it's almost like the Michelin man's being pumped up. And there's all sorts of tubes now that are being sort of high pressure, like high pressure hose. And it's almost like showing me how my posture needs to change in order to realign these things that went wrong when I was being formed in my mummy's tummy. So it's almost like, Todd, I'm almost going back now to the point of conception and even further back. That's what it feels like to me. I'm being restored, like everybody is, that they can just let go to their original face, as the Buddhists call it.
Yeah, that kind of pulls up an image. It's kind of a metaphor. Morgan and I were talking, and there's this figure. It looks like a figure, an infinity sign, except for their cones, right? They're cones. So we've talked about that. She drew that years ago, and then I was telling her how I was looking at things, and so this is right along the lines of what we were talking a couple of days ago. And that was, I'll put it in different words now because I think I can explain it better. So just picture that little space in between from one cone to the other as being conception or birth, right? So when we were coming into this realm, we had the full width of the cone, right? Because it's going to get, narrow and narrow. And that's all of our, let's just say all of our bodies, right? Or all of our, however you want to put it. And so what happens is we start to go down, everything gets stripped. We come out of the birth canal, no memory, and we know the story. And to me, it's like we've gone to the full expanse of the human, and now we're coming down again. But as we come down, this is what we've been doing, where we're picking up all of our memories and multidimensional aspects and all that stuff, learning from it basically to get to the point of a new conception. So to that little point again. And I think we've had some experiences, over the last few weeks with the light bodies, and we have for quite some time, but this has been like, across the planet, right? It's kind of sexy. I'll tell you about it later. but
you don't need to, mate. I was there watching.
Oh God. But anyway, but the point is, it's not about that. It's about the fact that the light body's doing that. So we kind of came to the mutual, I don't know, not truth or conclusion or whatever you want to call it, that the light body is the last one on. Like the light body's leading, like when you said the soul, like it's leading. But I really feel like we're entering that space in between the cones, like a 0 point. And when we come out, and this is just my own personal intel, this is the period where the new time begins, where we're not receiving code anymore. We're actually transmitting new creation code based on having aligned with everything, and now the human's leading, in balance. And I got this big download in Sedona, and they used Franco as an example. I'd spent the night before talking to him, and that's exactly what they were showing. They were showing how this energy expands, and it's just what you said about you didn't know you were going to talk about this, but talking about it is the code. It's the code,
I think I agree with you. I see it in a slightly different way. I think that the light body soul or car or whatever we call this, a Merkaba or anything, I think that it's knocked on the physical body. We've understood that the idea was to surrender and allow it to have its way. So we've moved up to a higher dimension then, being guided from an intuitive, inspirational point of view, rather than an intellectual trying to work it out type thing. So it's almost like we've had to jettison our intellect and our knowledge base to work into a feeling sense of intuition, which becomes a wisdom base then. So we're working from wisdom rather than from knowledge. I think I think that we're becoming, if we can surrender totally and absolutely, we're almost like becoming radiators, right? Yeah. So the soul is emanating this radiation through us, right? And we're sort of the head and the hands and the heart of the soul, because it needs us as physical entities to basically create from the impulses that are coming through us. And the other thing about souls is souls do have an agenda. They're not unconditional. Spirit itself is unconditional, but souls, because of their own unique qualities, they have a purpose for being here. I honestly believe this. And it's that purpose now it's propelling us now to almost say, get out of the way and just start expressing. There's nothing to be done. There's no direction as such other than to express the joy and create from that joy and that vitality that's working through us. And that's what enthusiasm is, Todd, because have a look around and so many people are depressed and contracted, really. And I try, and give them a little joke and stuff like that, just to slightly open up a chink so that some light gets through. Do you know what I mean? I've called it a wise crack, because I think the wise cracks let the light in. I get given these sort of little inspirational things.
That's a good meme, man. You should, put that on a shirt. That'd be like the happy face back in the 70s.
So I think, because it's so easy, isn't it, to fall into miserableness, and they say as miserable as sin. That's an expression that we use in the UK. Look at him, he's as miserable as sin, and I sort of believe that, because sin to me is just basically a contracted, constricted state where the energy is just going around in circles rather than fully expressing itself.
But that's what we came for. This is what's crazy, as it gets closer and closer, to that 0 point or whatever, that space between the cones or whatever. Obviously, it's happening. But the crazy thing is, what we're actually experiencing here, to the extreme, from my understanding, okay, is far more extreme than in other places. Like, for instance, we have much more free will than other planets. We have much more duality, much more extremity of polarities. And what's at the core of that experience? Deep fucking human emotion, right? And that's actually the catalyst, I think. Now, this again is kind of what's been coming in for me the last few weeks, putting everything together, talking to people, and the whole experience. And that is, and I'll give you an example. It'd be easier. So there's 2 nights that I went, I guess physically, in some way, physically teleported to Australia. And there was physical contact. All right. Now, a couple of things should be said. One, this wasn't a conscious merging. Okay, this wasn't me and her talking or messaging saying, "Hey, let's merge." It wasn't like that. We talk a couple of times a day, and I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I went to this place deep in my heart, and it wasn't hard to do. It was very natural and it was very balanced. I can't really explain it. And I just said, I want to be with her. Now, so that happened. And the only other time it happened was about a week ago, and the same thing. I went to bed. I went to that same place. So it was like the emotion had become like a strength versus a weakness. And I don't have the science down, and I don't have much down more than what I've just said. But to me, there's some type of link between what we would call the human heart, or maybe the pure human heart that's got no shadow left, or the trajectory of that. And there's something about that ingredient in this new code and new template, new earth, new lives that we're making, that has to do with like transmuting or transforming that into a strength from a weakness. Kind of like an empath. The empathic abilities and sensitivities used to be a weakness. Now it's been turned around, and people know, well, I don't have to take this on. I can actually use this to fortify my field and watch my external align with me, rather than me trying to align with my external, because I feel everything and go crazy and become a multiple personality,
I couldn't agree more. Emotion to me means energy for action, emotion, and I think if we don't act upon the information received now from our soul, which is our intuition and inspiration, if we don't act, it causes pain, because obstruction of this vital energy is pain. That's the sort of central tenet of alternative medicine, is that every pain is an obstruction to the vital flow of energy. So pain is an indication of, hang on a second, something's blocking.
What kind of medicine says that?
Alternative or holistic or integrative. They call it integrative medicine in the States. Yeah.
Integrated medicine. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And so I mean, it's Taoism. It's all the philosophy. It's all about energy. It's energy medicine, Todd. That's it, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that the doctors of the future, right, they won't be like the ones we've got now, where they sit at a computer, they feed in all the symptomatology, and out pops a prescription at the end. It won't be that now, in my view, and I see this very clearly now. The doctors of the future will be more like medical physics technicians. It will be all about physics, and the medicine will be frequencies. I've got no doubt about that. I mean, people are talking about things called med beds now, which will work on this principle. I think that we're quite a way away from that now. But I keep seeing, I've mentioned this word before, chromatooptogenetics, because I think what that is it's almost like you can retune to the original signature of the individual soul, and then we can send frequencies in then using sound and light at various frequencies to almost like scan the body, find out where there's misalignment, and then send in healing frequencies to de-obstruct these things. Todd, I can see it as clear as anything that it's on the way, you know. And the thing about it is that's why music's so powerful, making beautiful music together. You know, it's not music really, it's noise. You know, it's making beautiful noise.
That's right.
Because what works for one person will not work for another people. So there is a unique characteristic to this that, you know, and when the person's then de-obstructed and clear, then they can express themselves and make the world a better place. You know, I can see it as easy as anything. And I think it's also part of the soul's project towards self-mastery. And I think that the more that the heart expands, the more that we link up, if you like, with my 12 cranial nerves, which are the 12 meridians, which are the 12 disciples, which represent the 12 tribes, I think that that's going to sort of go out. And every time then we de-obstruct one of those pathways, it's almost like a portal opens to a new stream of consciousness that comes in. Now, what I got today, as clear as anything, is everything, Joe, has always been and always will be. Nothing changes. Everything is already in place now, right? And this is where the timeline thing came in. You know, it's just that when the different activations of these different portals come in, time changes all the time. And I understood this. Now, I can't really explain it now, but you know, 2 hours ago, I was getting all this thinking, wow, that's bloody fantastic, you know, but I'll have to let it sink deeper in so I can sort of explain it. But I think what I'm getting to, Todd, is the answer, in my view, is don't intellectualize anything. Don't analyze it. Let go. Let it flush through. Accept that the process is much more intelligent than us. And look back in 3 months' time, and then you'll be able to see what was actually going on. Because I think the ego is a tricky character. Because if it knows what's coming up beforehand, it will try and get out of it.
Dude, you know what? I was on this I was on this stream last night. I was on this wavelength last night. And I was thinking about it, and I was going, okay, it's like we're getting to the point where we're not even going to have time to try to figure it out and understand it and be so clever, right? We're not. It's moving too fast. But I was thinking the same thing. I thought, you know what? Every time we start to frame this stuff up, and certainly there's some value, and certainly it's an understanding that there's an evolution to it, and it's a transition. So what's today, the way the process works today won't be the way it works tomorrow. It just gets more and more refined to where we're, you know, I guess, in a dimension with no death, basically. But the thing is, it's like when you start to frame it up, you're immediately creating labels, definitions, parameters, and it's just not going to work. And it's not a condemnation or a judgment. It's just part of our evolution. I think that's okay. And this is along the lines of what you were talking about earlier too. I don't want to go back to it because I think you're somebody that could actually speak to it pretty well. So first of all, you are what you see, right? So I think that's one of the things that's really coming home for all of us now, especially with ourselves, is, am I being really transparent? I mean, we're headed for pure transparency. So we could call it vulnerability right now, because total transparency, it'd be pretty difficult to do for anybody, I think, right now, but we're on our way. So you have that situation happening, and like you said, so anyone that has that human in them, that is personifying and transmitting the human, regardless of what their information is, regardless of everything else, there's a truth frequency there. And that's, to me, where the gold is. But in this transition, there is the intellect is over here and intelligence is over here, like you said earlier. And I was just thinking, when you were talking about that, what I was referring to yesterday, which you then went on to talk about the same thing, is in your experience, because you've been in the medical. Well, first of all, you drank for years and you raised hell, and you were in the industry then, okay, and then you continue to stay in the industry. You clean yourself up, and blah, this 30, 35, whatever the number of years are. Now you're going through the ascension. You've had a lot of textbook and instruction, uni instruction and so on and so on and so on. But at the same time, you've been piped in. Okay. So like, has there been a struggle with you between like the intellect and intelligence? I mean, I would think in the arena you're in and the way you're built, I would just think that it would be like a daily thing. Like you're front and center with your ego every day, especially being in that environment.
Yeah, this is what I feel is the conflict between character and personality. I think personality is an ego structure built from knowledge. It's built from social engineering, and it's basically information that's come from the outside in. That's the obstruction. What I keep saying a lot of times is I had to, in order to get better, was metaphorically decapitate myself and allow all the knowledge to go away and start to live from the heart. And this is when I lost my job in the NHS, National Health Service in the UK. I was sacked because I was drunk on duty and all that sort of business,
Wow.
And I lost the job. And it was in the psychiatric department that I was reintroduced to my heart and soul, really. And I realized, Todd, and somebody said to me, Joe, with all this knowledge you've got, because I do have a lot of knowledge, Todd, and I can say big words and all that. So big deal, and I used to really play on that all the time and stuff, Now it means bugger all to me, because they said to me, Joe, with all this knowledge that you've got and all these qualifications, right, how much power did it give you? Because you've just tried to take your own life. And I said, yes, this is true. And he said, why don't you do yourself a favor? Tomorrow, wake up and pretend like you don't know anything at all about anything and start to get a new life. And that's when I was almost like spiritually reborn with a clean sheet, Todd. Oh, see, now when I'm on the right thing, I get a big thing going up my spine to say, keep going, son, you're going well here, So I was, that would be called, if you were a religious person, being reborn in spirit, because something changed in me and I was sort of reconnected with my energy body. And what happened then was, Todd, that I could feel the energy coming through me. It was coming from the center of me, all through my pores, single pore.
Was this in the psych ward? Or
in the psychiatric ward. There was all sorts of.
I'm curious. When did this happen to you? Like what year?
This is over 30 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so it was all happening at the same time. So I was in the psychiatric ward. There was a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous upstairs. So that clicked back in. I'd been in AA for 9 years, not understanding what they were going on about. Right. I tell you what, Todd, this was all happening at the time of the harmonic convergence, which I didn't know about. So we're talking about 1987. At that point, it was so much for me. I was trying to run and smash my head against the wall to let all this stuff out because I didn't know what was going on with me, So this was all happening. And I was like coming out, trying to keep off the drink, going back on it. And then suddenly, so it was 1991, 1992 that I had my last drink or any mind-altering substance. So from that point, I started to walk, being guided from my soul or my heart. I didn't really understand that then, but just going with a feeling that seemed to be pushing me forward, because at the point I tried to kill myself, I think I told you before, I got this peace that passeth all understanding. Everything, time stopped still. I got that life review, right? Yeah. And I got this feeling of, son, it was almost like a feeling that turned me round, kicked me up the ass, right, or the arse, right, and said, you came here. This is the reason you came here, to learn about this. Now, your job now is to go back and share your experience and your strength and your hope with others. And we're going to use you, if you like, as a model of good practice. Well, Todd, I didn't have a bleeding clue what was going on about, but when I say that these weren't words that I heard, in fact, I do hear, sometimes I hear clear words, but these weren't words. It was like a really strong thought form, like a telepathic thought form. Yeah. And that's what guides me to this day, Todd. And I get different things, and I whether they're ETs or they're angels, I don't really get into that. All I get a sense of is I have streams of consciousness that guide me, that seem to have different voices. And that's all I go into, really. Now, I know lots of our chums on here, you know, they have extraterrestrials, and it may be Arcturians or Pleiadians or whatever. Fine, that's okay. But that's not my particular structure that I work with, although that might be actually what's guiding me. I don't know. However, go on, mate. Go on. What were you going to say?
Nothing. Keep going.
Yeah, I think, however, I did have really, really powerful, strong visitation from a black dragon, right, with piercing red eyes. And honestly, Todd, it was almost like I was looking at it as I'm looking at you now, right?
Well, you were looking at your own face.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
It scared the shit out of me, mate.
Yeah.
And I feel that coming in, right?
You feel it. Coming. You feel it coming in today. Or I mean, this
the other day, no, it's come back. I mean, in the last week, it's back again. Yeah. And what happens with it, when it comes in, I get a very sort of forthright, very straightforward. Don't take any shit, Joe. Just go forward.
I think there's a lot of that pill going around for a lot of people, man.
Yeah. But it's not meant in any way to be destructive. It's actually a protective force.
It's sovereignty. It's sovereignty. Yeah. It's sovereignty. It's like, what is sorry? I mean, these are all interchangeable words: unconditional love, pure alignment. But it's that end of sovereignty or love, that one of many multiple faces. That's the Kali or the Anubis energy. It's the noble. And there's a lot of people doing this in their own way, and nobody's doing it perfectly. But what's really amazing, if you look at the post and the comments in in these communities such as Soulogy, that, you know, when I go on the news feed and all that, right there, you can see the self-expression, you can see the individualization, you can see the projection, but it's not like it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago. There's not a lot of infighting. It's more of I'm standing up for myself, and that's really, that's really a big part of what's happening, I think, in human terms. And I think it goes back to that thing that you brought up, like you're dealing with this intellect. And the intellect is not only, it's not that it's not you, but it's such a small part of you. But at the same time, it's such an important part of you because it's the whetstone of the soul. It's where we hone our skills and gather information. That's really another thing that's happened too for me over the last few weeks it's kind of like my daughter telling me about her boyfriend. She wasn't really charged. Her heart felt it, but she wasn't charged, right? And so I'm looking at things like that's information. Like I just had something happen a few days ago that in the old world wasn't very cool. You know what I mean? You're immediately going to have people pointing fingers and blame and shame and all that bullshit. And I just simply looked at it. I looked at the entirety of what it was a part of and how wonderful and aligning it was for so many people. And then at the very end of it, there's a little blip. And I thought, as soon as I heard it, I just went, okay, this is information. This is code. This is energy. It's not about, getting caught up in all this bullshit. It's like, okay, now I know. Like next time I go through something similar or the same, I'll know what to look for. I learned something. And I think that's a big part of our journey here, to your point about the soul's agenda, the soul's purpose. Like we all have these individual things. Like you said, I have more an infinity for a dragon, a black dragon. This one's Arcturian over here, this guy over here. So it's almost like we are, just as we are here with red, black, white, yellow, brown, that we've got multi-dimensional makeup too. So there's all different species, all different galaxies, solar systems, universes represented here. And but I think one of the things I'm seeing right now too, or feeling right now, experiencing, is the human really getting grounded. I don't know how else to put it. Yeah. I don't know how else to put it.
No, I agree, mate. And I when you're saying that, I've got the dragon here now, and it's digging its feet into the ground and it's shaking its bum like that, right? Ready for, right, to be pushed, because you could not push this thing now. right? And that's what I feel sometimes, is because I used to be, believe it or not, I used to be quite quiet and very, very shy about saying things just in case somebody disagreed or I upset somebody by using words, you know. And now I don't give a shit, basically, because I just open up. And whatever comes out, it's almost like if people don't like it, that's not my problem, because I'm not doing it to offend anybody. But, you know, sometimes my jokes get me into trouble, you know, and sometimes I do throw a few in just for a bit of fun, you know, just to see what the reaction is. But there's things coming to me like, you know, I'm gonna say a word here that's gonna trigger you now. Soulology.
That doesn't trigger me.
It doesn't
trigger me.
I wanted to say it triggers me. It triggers me when people say it. I think, don't say that. It's not soulology.
Franco comes on twice a month, and he still says soulology. A lot of people say soulology.
Yeah, but another word that it keeps coming to me, and I think that this is the politics of the future, because organizations want to keep everybody standardized, as we know. That's basically the massive agenda that's going on. Standardization and automatization. I think that the only way forward is collective individuality. It's allowing everybody to be their individual soul selves, right? And I think that the decisions that need to be made for the planet will be through soulocracy, not democracy, but soulocracy. And that means that people will be guided from their soul, right? And I really think there'll be collective consciousnesses based upon heart-centeredness, not any sort of collaborative tricky-dickiness that goes on in the head, you know. So I think that's where we're going. And almost like, I mean, it's been called the wisdom of the crowds, Todd, you know, but there is a phrase called crowdocracy. That's right in the air. But you see what I mean? So in the future, if there are decisions to be made, maybe tribally and then even nationally and whatever, then there'll be people who'll sit in a mindful meditative state, and the inspirational ideas will come in based upon a consciousness that's basically a supervisor, So these are words. So soulocracy. It seems to be important to me, but collective individuality, where everybody's individual soul selves, not ego selves.
What does it say? What does it say in the Constitution? Unalienable rights to be free. I mean, I mean, you're not that they're doing it here. I'm just saying what you're saying is it. And see, I don't see. Look. Things are radically changing in our lives, especially in this community. And a lot of the radical change you see is the personal moves and the personal lifestyle of people. Okay. And so I think that whatever we see, it's going to be a rapid change. It's going to be not beyond our comprehension, but it's going to be pretty far out there. So what you're talking about is a lot like what Franco talks about with his intel. He says that in 2023, we'll be at a level where a council and councils will be running the world with the cooperation of what we call countries now, or whatever the case is. And we talked about this for quite some time. I said, how physical will that council be? He says, very physical. I hope he doesn't mind I said this, but I know he has said it on the show before. But anyway, my point is that this is, well, if I had to sum it up and just say, I don't know how this is going to evolve, but this is where I think it's actually going to go, like a pendulum. We need to just, and I want to be clear about this. We need to just hand the ball to the women. Seriously, because that, you know what I mean? Like, if you could imagine a group, let's say 12, 24, 36, 50, 100 of women with the balls, let's say the balls, not ideologies, nothing else. I'm just talking balls of Donald Trump. I mean, there is a movement occurring beneath us all that goes to what you're saying about the example you just gave, which was basically, to me, that's the mother goddess energy. It's the one that cares about every single child. So that collective individuality, that's contained within that. And I think we're going to see some radical changes that occur. And I think that it's only inevitable that we'll hand it off to the women, because just imagine Just imagine if we handed everything off to the women tomorrow, and I'm talking women as in high frequency women, obviously, you know, that are a reflection or leading us or whatever you want to call it, because we're sitting here. The world is just getting to the point where it's a cartoon. I watched Joe Biden last night on YouTube in major meetings. Not, you know what I mean? Like, this is like embarrassing. I don't give a shit what your politics are. But bottom line is, hand it off to them. And I'm speaking metaphorically, energetically, and literally. Hand it off to them and see what happens, because that pendulum will swing and it'll come back. We can find our middle, but this patriarchal's got to give up 100%. And to me, it looks like it's happening. You know, it's inevitable.
See, I think when you say female, I think feminine. I think because there are men who are driven very much by the feminine as well. You know, I think because in the inverted matrix, and I do a talk called the Mummy's Curse. You know what I mean? Because mother, and I do cause trouble with this, because I put at the end of it, mother doesn't always know best. And that's what I meant by a manipulating, inverted mother. Because mother, you know, martyr, right, is basically the root word of matrix, isn't it? So you know, and I think that there's been an inverted matrix that's been basically being driven subtly by a suppressed, repressed feminine. Right. And I think what that's happening now is this surge that's coming through, right, is actually causing the feminine to, right, re-emerge, because the uninverted or the natural or the organic matrix, right, is a nurturing. There's a technical word for it. It's called trophotropic. Yeah, in scientists, trophotropic means a nurturing energy. So it's about nutrition, it's about nurture, it's about intimacy and allowing, right, no sort of, you know, sometimes, I mean, I could go on forever, but sometimes when you could sort of snuggle in to the feminine and feel safe and secure, and then suddenly there'd be an upset then, and you know, anyway, I digress a bit really. So there was no complete security in it. There's always an eye out just in case. There was almost like a bipolar flash that happened, you know. So what I'm trying to say now is that's being removed now. It's gentle, but it's a really powerful energy that's coming through, and it's representative, Todd, of the vagus nerve. It's the vagus nerve in the human body. Because the sympathetic nerve, which is the masculine side, has basically had its day now. And this isn't a punishing energy that's coming through. It's almost like the feminine energy saying, look, hey, big boy, just back off a bit. And why don't we have a little chat here? And maybe this is a good way. And it's almost like the masculine side, if you like, is thinking, oh, I've never saw that before. A bit dumb, you know what I mean? Because honestly feel that the feminine, God is feminine.
You know how I feel about it. I mean, at least is it you know, in respect to this realm. But what you said about the dragon, okay, your black dragon, the red eyes, is back.
Yeah.
And the description you gave of its disposition, that's what I'm seeing in these women. At the Soulogy Fest, you know, of course, at Soulogy, this has been part of our intention, is to provide a platform for that energy, all right, which just happens to be predominantly feminine, female. Even you could go that far, and all you got to do is look at the percentages in these different light worker groups. But I saw it happen there. You know, of course, there was some intention, but also we tried to create this space of free flow. You know, everyone was like, okay, is this schedule accurate today? I'm like, no, just put an X on it. It's not accurate. So there was this level of spontaneity, which I believe is that free creative flow that is the feminine, at least by our futile attempt to describe it, you know, because we know it's all the same energy. But in this process, there was a point on the second night of the fest, and I had walked away because I've been emceeing all day. I went, took a break. I came back, and they had some music on, and there was about 10 women dancing. But it wasn't just dancing. I was watching them. They were anchoring in what we had been doing, which had to be happening in other parts of the world. It had to be. And it was so powerful, man. I just looked at it and go, okay, this is what Morgan and those like her had been leading to all this time. So the next day we get up and we start this. I did a little emceeing, and then Pamela Johnson, who is reluctant to come up, who's been around since the harmonic convergence or before, she walked to the edge of the stage, and we're very close. And I looked at her and I knew. She goes, I don't want to do this, but they're telling me I got to do this. Joe, I can't tell you what she said. But whatever happened, that room lit up. That whole place lit up. As soon as she got done, which was probably a 5-minute, speech, I handed the mic and introduced Alan Steinfeld, and I walked out of the tent, and I could feel the rush. And in that moment, 6 Black Hawk helicopters came around the cliff and right over the tent. Dude, I started howling like a wolf. Everybody came out of the tent. But my point is, you can't make this shift up, whatever it is, because every single day, and I bet you I met 30 to 40, I told Morgan this, I bet I met 30 to 40 women or people. About 5 were men. I didn't know their names. I'd never really heard of them. And every single one of them had the same soul. They had the same level of progression, I guess I would put it, or frequency. They were nurturing. They were I don't want to say all knowing, but they knew what the hell was going on. They didn't have to tell anybody. They don't want to be in front of a camera. I mean, to tell you, it blew me away. The first day, meeting all these women that I don't even know, right? Kundalini energy in a healthy way going off everywhere. I was crying the whole time. I had snot in my mustache, and I'm trying to MC all day, It was, but again, I'm not telling this story because of the fest or my own experience. I'm trying to say this is what we're talking about. And to me, the dragon disposition of your dragon of you is exactly what it is. There's no more BS. It's time to roll,
I agree. I also saw you do some Native American Indian stuff when you were there. Yeah. Did that just come through,
the first time that happened, what is this? There you go. I wish I had some of my stuff. I got to bring them up from downstairs.
Todd, that comes through me, and that's I can do that for 10 minutes, and I'm completely lost. And what seems to be happening now, and that's a powerful one in me, that connection to Native American Indians and stuff is powerful. And my heart opens, and just 10 minutes of that, I've gone, mate, totally and utterly gone, And so I don't know why I did that then, but you're not alone.
Dude, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. I can't really, but that's what you just did explains it. So much of the stuff coming in, even in a physical interaction, is nonverbal. I saw this happen in Sedona to myself and other people. And there was something, and again, this was the eclipse period, and of course the energy's just been off the hook anyway, but look, we had J.J. Hurtak wrote The Keys of Enoch, 1973, downloaded it. I didn't realize the comprehensiveness of that material. Part of it has to do with tones and sounds, and I saw a couple of presentations that he did, and his wife and Alan, and it's amazing. There was one point where he was doing his presentation at the Soulogy Fest, and he was using tones. And in that moment, I was taken back to when I was a little kid in the backyard. I'd be like, and just tone. And it was somehow aligning to my body or something to my body. It was just something that was very natural. So there was that. Eric Rankin came. He talked sonic geometry. He was talking about how, and her talk, they were talking about how a color has a sound, a letter has a sound, and it's all this relation, right? Which was very, very cool. And then we saw an instance of it, which was just batshit crazy. Shakina Rose gets up and Kalina Malnar. They totally spontaneous. I mean, they knew they were going to go on together. They didn't practice or nothing. They go on, two totally different forms of light language or harmonic light language. And there was about 8 times in this, I don't know, must have been 5-10 minutes, right? Where their voices, which were doing totally different things, aligned, and you could literally see, you could literally see these rays, and I could see some like geometry I'd never seen before. And it was the same, information. It was the same data as code that, Hertak had downloaded, or at least that part of it in 73, what Eric was talking about. There was a relation, there was a weaving with all of it. So, I looked at that experience as a whole too, and I thought, wow, if you look at the whole thing and you get all this information and then you parallel that out, extrapolate it out to other aspects of our experience, it's happening on all fronts, like it's like you said at the beginning of the show. It's futile at this point to sit here and talk about it. Now, that's kind of an extreme statement because there is an evolution, and yes, we're going to talk about it, but it's just fading rapidly,
It's marvelous, Todd. We could go on for ages, but I think morphic resonance explains a lot of this, and that's, to me, in the after conception, and the division or the fission of cells, how does one cell know to become a heart cell and then locate there? And to me, that's all about morphic resonance. They're called etheric formative forces. So I think that this is how the physical body is constructed, through this morphic resonance, and all the different shapes as well then come as a consequence of this, so that's a whole new field. That's the old, it's ancient knowledge coming back as modern science now. And I think that's what we've got to look forward now. It's the science, it's energy medicine and the science of frequency, the science of light, the science of sound, and the science of the 5 senses as well. Because I think we've become too audio visual, and really we need to get back to kinesthetic, which is the tactile, touching, feeling sensation,
What is I know what morphic field is. And I love that term. I nodded my head when you said it. Morphic resonance. Is that what you said? Like what would, just so people can, and maybe I can have a clearer understanding too. I get what you're saying. It resonates and I'm tingling, but like you're referring to really our physical experience. Like as the body's physical, you're saying there's a morphic resonance to it. I totally agree, but like what you just said just kind of lights me up, because that's actually what we're becoming sensitive to, I think. Like when you talk about the heart and how do you feel, instinct, innate, intuitive, this is where our decisions are coming from. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we're only just scratching the surface now, Todd. And, I think that we've been here before a long time ago. So we were resurrecting old knowledge now to be brought forward in the time that we're at now on the earth, So all this old stuff's coming back. And I think also there's something called epigenetics. I don't know whether you've heard of that, but to me, what epigenetics, epi means above. So we've got the original genetic code of the human being, or the soul, if you like. But over the eons of time, it's been cluttered and sort of obstructed by all this this social engineering and this slavedom and all that. I think what's happening now is the heart's bursting open now with a new vibration, and it's basically a purging and a cleansing energy. So we don't have to learn anything. We have to let go of everything for our original selves and to come through. It's like. Was it Leonardo da Vinci who did the David? He said he's
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. So he's chipping away, isn't he? Like that, and he's saying, "Well, I'm basically just chipping all the crap away." This is me paraphrasing. I'm chipping all the shit out of the way here to allow David to come through. So David was there. He just needed the crap to get out of the way so it could break through.
I think Michelangelo actually talked that way. Because I saw that quote where at 87 he says, "I'm still learning," but I actually channeled somebody that was with him that night. And he said, I'm still fucking learning.
Yeah, he said, hang on, he said, I can feel John Lennon coming through.
Oh, yeah, you touched on something too. Yeah, you know, and it's so easy to just, you know, create these little mantras or cliches but, you know, and we've talked about this before, a lot of them are very accurate. That this whole, yeah, because I think we've searched, you know, we've had to become aware, we've had to educate ourselves, we've, you know, all these things that we've been through, and we get to this point now, and it really is taking the thinking out of it. You know, this thing that you're talking about with not having to go too far with overthinking, right? But it's just that to thine own self be true thing. And it's like, wow, you're walking around going, you mean all I got to do is be me? I don't have to I don't have to do anything. You know, I just be me. That's it. That's the code. Well, that's the code. That's it.
I agree. I think that a word I like is extemporaneousness, and it means to live spontaneously without a script. And I think the script is, you know, it's almost like anonymity. As soon as you put a name on something, it becomes something to argue with, really. So it's where we're at now. Is a lot of us are at. We're beyond words now, and climbing now, or being guided beyond symbols as well, because symbols have been powerful for a long time. I almost feel as though we're moving now beyond symbols as well, Todd. You know.
Yeah, I think so. It's crazy too, you know, and I think it's a good time too that people are, you know, either consciously or not or both, staying in their own lane. Which, what does that mean? That means no judgment or less judgment, or, you know, the trajectory of no judgment. And again, I think, you know, again, Morgan and I were talking about this a couple of days ago in an ongoing conversation. The word addiction, which you're familiar with in your work and in your life. I've always had a little bit of a, I don't like that word, you know, there's, the way she put it was, hey, you can call it this, you can call it that, you can call it this, you can point to this and point to that, but it's just distraction.
Yeah.
It really is distraction. Yeah. It's really the human. And it could be anything. It could be watching fucking ESPN for 18 hours a day sitting on the couch. Yeah. It could be anything. It's not, in my opinion, attached to any chemical. It's just, it is energy. And what's happening is this energy is presenting itself as it does to us all day long, every day through our life. And we're going over here because we don't want to think about it. And we've done it so much that it's just second nature. And there you got people always looking at their phone or whatever the case is. But this goes back to, again, to what you were talking about earlier. And I forgot the word that you spoke of medically, but this is where the pain comes, right? This is where the blockage comes. What'd you say? The energy's, you know.
So any pain is an obstruction of the flow of vital energy. You know, it's quite well known that, really. So it's energy medicine or integrative medicine, you know.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more. Sorry, mate. Sorry.
No, you go. You go.
Just to say that what I've learned recently as well is just how important the connection between the heart and the throat is, and how we basically use the root of our tongue to suppress our true selves. And what I've found is a very, very gentle technique that if you put your hand on your heart, one hand on your heart, and the other one gently, just gently caressing the throat like that, and almost imagining that the throat's opening up, because the root cause of anxiety is a constriction in the throat. And I'm going to say a couple of technical words now, but there's a nerve called the glossopharyngeal nerve, and there's also the vagus nerve, and that's basically the masculine and the feminine. Well, the masculine's been too predominant. So if we start to smooth this out, it's almost like a balancing starts to happen then. So the heart opens, more energy comes up. There's a tendency to want to swallow it back down again. But if you can imagine that you're staying open to it. Now, how do you know it's working and there's a release coming? Because you may start yawning. Because yawning's a sign that a relaxation response is coming through. You may start to salivate and slobber. That would be a really positive sign. if you allow it to go further up, because what we want, Todd, is we want it to go up through the center of our brain, out through the crown of our head, right? If you start to weep, I don't mean cry as such, but start to lacrimate, that's a technical word. If you start to get tears coming down for no reason, that would be a sign that a release is happening. And then to go back to what we talked about at the beginning, if you start to feel uncomfortable then in your solar plexus, it's working, because stuff is emerging now from the depth. And so if you can then keep that tube open through an open heart, it will transform through the heart. Just to go back to the old style self, what we were is basically gut, head, gut. There was no central point to transform it. But as the heart opens, it becomes a sort of nurturer, intimate, moderated of all this stuff. And that's where true balance comes in. I just got a feeling to say all that, to say to people is, start to become gentle with yourself. Allow the jaw to relax. Allow the tongue to relax. But allow the root of the tongue to relax and de-obstruct the throat so all this stuff can come up. Thank you for letting me share that, mate.
Yeah, that's powerful information. I mean, and see, like, this is another thing I think that's happening a lot too. Like, I'm listening to you, and it's the space between the words. I can see, I can feel the code coming up, validation, confirmation, synchronicity of what you're describing in a physical sensory way. Primarily, I can totally relate. I remember these moments, and especially in the last few weeks. And then, of course, the salivating, you know, and the mouth getting all wet. That happens when I'm around Morgan, but that must mean that I'm elevating.
Yeah. No, it's when she's cooking. It'll be the smell of the food.
No, I didn't want to make. I wanted to ask you too. Do you have a little time? Because we're running over.
Yeah.
Oh, 1:11, 1 minute. I said that. I asked you that at 1 hour, 11 minutes, 11 seconds. So you can't make this shift up. Christy Sparksman is coming on after this in about 34 minutes. So what was I going to say? It was important. Oh, yeah. If you would. I don't want to explain. I don't need to explain things. I just think that what you opened the show with, there's a little bit more that maybe I missed something. That was a very powerful interaction to occur in anyone's life in 2021. You know, I mean, you're talking about, and there's a lot of people that are transitioning. We know this. You know, I remember when I was a little kid, when you're still connected. And I remember, you know, in the conversations with the universe, and I'm talking like 4, 5, 6 years old, that I was told, or I understood, that a person could basically, and this is going to be going to, you know, Western religious terms, because those are my context. A person could literally, you know, could be a total whatever the whole life, but on their deathbed. And I'm not talking about your ex-wife. I'm just talking about that it's never too late. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because of what you said to her, right? And I thought it was such a great example, metaphorically and literally, okay? Because you dropped everything, and said, "I'm sorry, I was an asshole." And when we do that, and this is just one example, because it could be you getting on a stage and doing ancient song. It could be so many different things, but it's pure. That's the point. And every time we do that, there is now an immediate reciprocation. I thought that example that you gave, where she opened her eyes and said, "It wasn't your fault." I mean, that's, you know what I mean? I mean, that's if you can really see it, that's it. And it's not a one-time scenario. This is something that we can actually, it's the accelerator for what we're creating and what it's going to be like. It's not an aberration, and it's not a one time every now and then, you know, thing. This is our natural frequency, and it's initiated by, well, in this example, by what you did, right? Like just laying it out there and saying, "Hey," you know, Because it can be done anytime, any place, whether there's 1,000 people or one person.
I think, Todd, I think that was an extreme example, but this woman bore the brunt of my drinking, and she was the kindest, the most considerate and loving woman that anybody could ever imagine. And nobody, and people say this because when we went through the service, I said some words, and I said that nobody ever had a bad word to say about her, ever.
Wow.
Right. And then my head was going into, well, how the hell, right, did this lovely, kind person get stuck with a twat like me, right? These are my thoughts, you know what I mean? Now, I made amends to her a long time ago physically, but this was a deeper amend, right, at a very sacred time, I felt, Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is karma, right, is an intelligent force, and it's about rebalancing. It's not about good and bad. It's not about, and stuff like that. It's about energetic neutralization. And I think that that's what actually happened in that process. And I think it's happening to lots of people is because I think people are starting to see clearly where they've maybe gone astray and started to accept their side of the story. Do you see what I mean? No, and I think they're also being infused with courage as well to be able to go up to people where it doesn't cause any harm and to say, look, I've started to see the error of my ways and I'm awfully sorry about it. And it's generally what I'll have to say about my ex-wife is, Dot, her name was, right? What I have to say about it is she was the most forgiving woman that I've ever met in my life. You know what I mean? And I think that this is all part of forgiveness now. So rather than be going out fighting people, I think people realize that we're all at different stages of development in this great thing.
Right.
It's almost like a big setup so that we can fully at depth experience what it's like to be a human in all compartments, And I think I'm just trying to say this. I've got a feeling that if you're feeling like that, right, and you want to point the finger because it was their fault, there will be a part of you that accepted this at some level. So as soon as you point the finger, there's always three fingers coming to back. How did I put myself in this position in the first place? And like I've learned over a long, long time is my job is to clean my side of the street without apportioning any blame whatsoever to the other person. Todd, that's really, really difficult. And I've learned it saved my life to do that because I followed a set of principles and I went through it. And every time I said sorry to a person that I'd hurt, now it didn't matter whether they said, oh, it's okay, we forgive you because you're really a nice person. Some people told me to F off and never darken their door again. And I would go back to the person that was guiding me. And he said to me, Joe, did you retaliate? And I'll say, no. He said, then your job is done. You've cleaned your side of the street. You do not know what the outcome of that will be. But nevertheless, you've shown the universe that you've been courageous enough to take those steps and do the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. I like that comment. Forgiveness is about me, Gilda Stern. No, you're right. And, I was in our ongoing daily conversation about, what we're all talking about or experiencing. And this, again, is in the last 3 or 4 days. And we're talking along the same lines of, wow, what does this look like? What's happening? What are you experiencing? I mean, this is me and Morgan talking. And I said to her, what I think we're going to see more and more of and quickly is what you're talking about, where people say, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to go over here and tell this antagonist, I'm sorry for what I did, without the expectation or the consideration at all of what they're going to do. You just clear your plate. That's all you can do is clear your plate. You can't clear anyone else's plate. And I think that's another thing that's happening. As an example, people with their children. I can't even imagine having children in my house at this point. Now, I would imagine that there's another side to it, that they're carrying a higher frequency and you're able to be exposed to things that, open up things in you. But if anyone that has children, our relationship is totally different than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. It's like walking the talk no matter what. There was no exceptions. Okay, I can ascend and I can have everything in place except for this relationship. or this role or my bank account. You know what I mean? There's no exception here. There is the other thing I see that's, I believe, will be continue to be a pervading, expanding, saturating energy is the humility. Because there is no way that no matter what, that oneness is not in that space of what we're seeing reemerge, which is that plugged in part of us. We can call it the feminine, mother goddess energy, and call it whatever you want, but it's that plugged in part of us that wants no credit, that just takes care of business and loves as only love can, and I think it's happening. I think we're seeing hard evidence, Joe, of our efforts over the last, through our entire lives, plural, not just I'm talking incarnations, be they on planet or off. I mean, this is a huge, huge arena that we're creating of potential.
I agree. And one thing I'm seeing a lot of is the narcissist empath, dynamic. There's lots of it. And Todd, when I was drinking, I was the bully. I was the narcissist. Right.
Wow.
See, what I'm trying to say, Todd, is that was in me. That was in me.
Yeah.
And the drink released that in a destructive way. Now that same energy is back now. And it's the dragon energy, Todd. It's the dragon energy that's being transformed now through the heart and being used in a positive way. It's almost like when criminals turn round, or when dark angels turn round, right? It's they turn around and they go, oh my God, look, I've been such an idiot, but I've still got these abilities and this power. Maybe I can use it for good purpose now, and maybe put sort of things right. I'm not suggesting that you should feel guilty about it. All I'm saying is I think that there's a complete reversal. It's a bit like Franco's sort of inversions of Matrix and things. I think there's an upturn that happens, and that's certainly what happened with me in this sort of great big awakening. It's almost like I got turned on my head to start to see the world right way up, you know what I mean? And I think what's happening now is common sense is uncommon sense now. When people say use your common sense, I don't think that we need to use common sense, because the world as it is now is the consequence of common sense, right? We need people who are working from uncommon sense, right?
That's right.
So there's so many different things, but all I'm trying to say, Todd, is, and there's a phrase that, it's called an ism, alcoholism. And what I really learned was the alcohol's in the bottle, but the ism's in me. And what the ism was is I, self, me. It was all egocentricity and self-serving, pretending. And I was brilliant at gaslighting. I could say something to you and you'd believe in 5 minutes that it was your problem, right? And so I can see it, Todd. And when I'm saying is about reaction, what's happened to me is I'm hardly ever emotionally reactive anymore. But it doesn't mean to say that I don't take inspired action. Because sometimes, and my favorite phrase is, sometimes you need to punch people with love. Just to knock them out, temporarily, until they maybe see sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
so
I relate to that.
And so the sort of final thing is, I'm only learning, mate. I only feel like every day I'm just scratching the surface, and another bubble of realization comes up. And I tell you what I had today, as I had that awe of bloody hell. Isn't this world absolutely fantastic? Yeah. This natural beauty. I had an awesome day today where everything looked absolutely beautiful. And I thought, you couldn't make this stuff up,
No. I mean, that's, I think the appreciation, the level of appreciation that's happening too with everything. I mean, it's all related. I mean, it's just, what do you say? I mean, I looked, I was distracting myself last night, and I just came across. Well, I like to watch "We Are Change" by Luke Radowski. It's issues, human issues, world issues, but there's something about the flavor of his productions that I really admire. And he'll start his shows with a little spoof, right? And the spoof was simply a camera on, and this is not about politics. I'm just making a point about the world. and it was just a camera at the G7 on Joe Biden. That was absolutely unintelligible. And I'm talking about 3 minutes of this, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at that, that's a microcosm. If you look at that, everything that we're looking at, I don't give a shit what it is. It doesn't matter if it's climate change, global warming, COVID, everything that's being presented, everything that's I mean, it's a joke. It's such a joke. And I see more and more people going, I don't even have to keep myself from watching that stuff. It's actually comical. It's giving us more. It's just pushing us to the point where we're going to push ourselves because it's so stupid. I mean, you know, this thing, like I said before, oh, well, the military's in charge, so we're okay. Well, when in the world has the military not been in charge, and when was it okay? When Attila the Hun was, or Genghis Khan, or was it Alexander or Napoleon? You know, give me a fucking break. It's about us. I am fucking soul. Yeah. Period. End of story. You are soul. I am soul. It's about us. It ain't about all this bullshit and these narratives and all this, you know, it's not. And whether we want to believe that or not, I'm of the knowing that we're all going to come to this understanding. Oneness is oneness, period, end of story. It doesn't matter what timeline you're on. So it's exciting to be back, and
it is.
Yeah,
I've loved this. I love talking to you, mate, and I think I've done what I said I'd do. I've softened you up for Christy because she's gonna have you.
I've never met Christy.
No. We've got a connection already. I can tell. Right? I've never met her. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. I saw a post she did. I don't remember what it was, but it was an incredible post. I think it had to do with. I don't know what it had to do with. It was a sovereignty post.
Yeah.
And I put it in the Soulogy group, and I mean, there's like 1,000 people on this thing. You know, it's what we've been talking about. It's the black dragon with the red eyes. You know, it's, yeah, I think it, you know, it's certainly happened like say March, April on to now. It keeps expanding. And that is everybody's on their own, you know, truthfully, nobody can do anything for you. To me, the best gift I have, probably the greatest, you know, let's say created or manifested aspect is to be in a relationship like I am with Morgan, because everyone thinks it's the bells and the whistles. If you just use that as an analogy with what we're going through, you know, it's not. It's having a mirror and going, okay, I see something in my beloved that I'm not seeing in myself. And this code that comes from it's never them, it's always me, there is no exception to it. Them can be an energy, it can be a circumstance, an organization, a government, it can be whatever. You know, there's something that's happening where we're no longer looking at ourselves as mirrors to find the shit, but we're actually starting to see the gold and the purity of the mirrors. And I think that's happened this year. That's just my opinion, you know.
No, I feel the same way, mate. I do.
You know, I just want to say, I love you, Joseph. I'm talking to Joseph Lamb. I love you. You're welcome on here anytime. And when I say that, you're welcome to come on and make your comments anytime. I love you, brother. And it's never them, it's always me. That's the only advice I can give myself and you. So, Joe, I'll see you, another 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
You know, do it again. Give my condolences to your family and your children and to you.
Mate.
And, you know, for everybody that's gone through that and is going through that, I don't know what you say to people. Not before this happened and not now. I don't. Everyone has to go through that. That grief thing is huge, you know. But as I wrote during my grief-stricken period when I realized I was going to be on the other side of the world from my beloved, I wrote a poem, and it said, "Grief, fear has nothing on grief. We beat grief and we beat everything else. We can goddamn sure, excuse my French, we can surely beat we beat chemtrails, GMOs, fluorides, 1%, Illuminati's, galactic wars, archons, rogue reptilians. We are that, and that cannot be taken out. I am that, which created me, so now let's see what happens. I don't know. I was going to say, let's see what happens in a year, but I think it's going to be more like 2 or 3 months.
I think lightheartedness is the key, Todd.
Yeah.
Lightheartedness.
Hey, I have an off, just out of the blue question for you. I don't even know why. It's got to be for a reason. If spaceships land, in your opinion, today, and it can be one or the other, do you think it would be our soul brothers and sisters, or do you think it'd be fake? I'm just curious.
I think it would be fake.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, brother. I love you.
God bless you, mate. And my regards to your good lady.
I'll tell her. You take care. We'll be back in 15 minutes with Christy Sparksman. All right.
Toodaloo.
All right. I'll see you later. Okay. I forgot how this thing works now. I can't remember how it works. Here we go.